and welcome to the next lesson on the market. Today we are going to be looking at the market through supply and demand. First of all, we're going to look at demand. So demand is how much that the people want. The people want the demand. The people create the demand. The people want to create the demand. And this is what the curve of demand looks like. It's the demand graph. So we put the independent variable on the y-axis in economics. It's kind of weird for you math geeks out there, but so that's just how we do it in economics. And the dependent variable goes on the x-axis, which is the demand. Alright, so now let's look at the curve itself. So basically you notice this is down sloping. That's what the law of demand says. The law of demand says that the demand is inversely proportional to the price. As price goes up, demand decreases. Price goes down, demand increases. Right? Because when the price is lower, you're going to want to get more of the item, or more people are going to want to get the item. Right? So let's consider when it's at $4. Approximately one person is going to want it when it's at $4. So let's say you get tired of keeping the price at $4. You're only getting one customer a day. You want more customers a day. So you're going to sell the item for $2. Okay, great. Now 2 people want it. Still not a lot, but you're still making money. Now you decrease the price to $1, which is absolute least you can decrease the price to. You're saying in this situation, 4 people want it. So you see, price goes down, demand goes up. Price goes up, demand goes down. And it's the other way around for supply. Next, we're going to be looking at supply. Alright, so now we can look at supply. And, oops, dropped my marker. We're going to look at supply, which is what is made. So, basically how much is produced. That's what supply is. You are supplied with something, something is produced with it, right? Alright, so again, we're putting the independent variable on the y-axis. That's a little confusing, but here to stay with it. Price on the y-axis, supply on the x-axis. Supplies are dependent variable. So, supply, notice how this kind of looks just like a linear graph, or kind of linear, depending on how I drew it, but it's supposed to be a linear graph. It's linear because supply is directly related to price, according to the law of supply. Supply goes up, price goes up. And the other way around. Price goes up, supply goes up. Price goes down, supply also goes down. Alright, so now let's actually analyze the curve. So let's say that you are pricing something at $10. So if you're pricing something at $10, how many are able to be produced? Let's say 1 is able to be produced. This is a very expensive item, by the way. But only 1. This is happening. So now you decide to raise the price to $20 because that way you'll be able to produce more. The supply becomes 2. And so on. Raise it to $30, you're able to supply 3. And raise it to $40, you're able to supply 4. Raise it to $10,000, you're able to supply 1,000. And so on, all the way to infinity. Alright, next, now that you know what supply and demand are individually, we're going to look at how and what happens when they interact with each other. Alright, so now we are going to look at supply and demand when they interact with each other. So, supply, as you may recall, is upward sloping, demand is downward sloping. So it's always going to be included with aggregates, which we'll discuss in Lesson 6. So I adjusted the scale to make it a little more realistic. This is quantity supplied, quantity demanded. So what happens when they shift? Well, first let's look at what happens when they're together. So when they're together, you notice the point at which they intersect. This point is called equilibrium. So now let's see what happens to the equilibrium point as we change the curves. So let's say something becomes more fashionable. The more people are willing to buy it. Well, that would shift the demand curve to the right because it's increasing. let's take a look at what happens. So you can see that the equilibrium raised in both terms of quantity and price. It raised from $2 to $3, and it raised from 2 items to 3 items. So the opposite of that would happen when the demand curve shifts the other way. But what happens when supply shifts? Let's say people in the supply factory are able to produce something a lot easier. Let's see what happens to the equilibrium point when we shift the supply curve to the right. So this is what it looks like. You can see that it decreased the price from 2 to about 1.5, but it increased the quantity still, and that kind of makes sense because if the amount of demand stays the same, supply shifts right. See, you're going to get a decrease in the price, but still an increase in the quantity. Alright, that concludes our lesson for today. See you next time in Lesson 3.